So, the 2019 remake of Dumbo is fine. It's fine. It's 2 hours of totally harmless family entertainment, and sure, the scene-to-scene pacing is super weird and all the jokes feel like a first take, and there's a horrifying CGI monkey, and Eva Green isn't even in most of the movie, which feels like a total waste of Eva Green, but it's fine. And it's not really the movie as a movie that I want to talk about. I want to talk about the movie as a product, specifically a product for an audience, because who is Dumbo 2019 made for? Disney have been remaking their animated back catalogue for about 10 years now, making live-action, quite heavily CGI remakes that have basically been a license to print money. Tim Burton actually pretty much kicked off this trend with Alice in Wonderland, which made over $1 billion. It was the 7th movie ever to do that. And Disney have been gung-ho about doing live-action remakes ever since. There's a lot of arguments you can make about art and filmmaking and entertainment, but at the end of the day, Disney is a company. It exists to make money, and it makes movies to make money. And to make money from a movie, you need to appeal to an audience. Traditional Hollywood thinking has 4 main audiences. They're called the 4 quadrants. You got males under 25, females under 25, males over 25, and, well, Hollywood is still kind of struggling to acknowledge that females over 25 exist, but they do count them as an audience quadrant. But when it comes to animated and family films, you've got a much more complicated audience breakdown. You've still got a gender divide because girls and women are more likely to see Disney films because of that traditional princess association. This is something the studio is fighting really hard against and mostly succeeding actually at the moment. But instead of those 2 age groups, under and over 25, you got 4 groups, and they're not so much age groups as kid groups. Let me explain. For any animated or family film, your first and youngest audience is kids. They're the tastemakers, they've got the pester power, but they don't actually make the final decision about what film is seen and what money gets spent on seeing that film. Your next group is people without kids, people who've aged out of seeing Disney movies with their families, but still have an independent income, so less teenagers, more 20-somethings. A lot of the time this is referred to as a millennial audience, but that's a bit of a misnomer increasingly as millennials start to actually have kids. But for the sake of argument, let's call them the no kids. Your next group is people with kids, the parents, the ones who actually spend the cold hard cash to see these movies. I'm going to lump in grandparents with this too, because much like parents, they're accompanying a younger audience member to see this movie, but they ultimately make the decision about which movie is seen. The last group is parents of no kids. These are people who are no longer taking their children to Disney films, but don't have grandkids to take instead. Any big tentpole family film already has 2 of these audiences on lock, kids and parents/grandparents. Disney in particular has a really strong hold on these 2 groups because it's considered safe, easy family entertainment. While a lot of other franchises do appeal to kids, your Batmans, your Fast and Furiouses, your Jurassic Worlds, parents, and particularly parents of younger kids, are more likely to take them to Disney films. The real success story for these live-action remakes is that they bring in an audience who normally wouldn't see family films. People without kids. By doing sequels and remakes for films that had a childhood significance to people who've now aged out of seeing family films, Disney reels that audience right back in. Toy Story 3 was one of the first movies to really successfully do this, and Pixar are on an absolute tear at the moment, with Finding Dory and Incredibles 2 bringing in $1 billion each. Beauty and the Beast was the most successful Disney live-action movie so far, and it was right in that sweet spot of Disney Renaissance. And even better, when you hook this audience, you also get that elusive final audience, the parents of people without kids, because millennials love nostalgia, they have a disposable income, and most of them want to share those childhood experiences with the people who raised them. Hell, I took my parents to see Incredibles 2, even though they had absolutely no recollection of watching the first one with me. I took them to see The Force Awakens too.
Here's some money, go see a Star Wars.
This is also kind of the reason that the Star Wars sequels have been so successful, because they're family films for entire families, not just people with kids.
I don't have friends, I got family.
So what does any of this have to do with Dumbo? Well, basically I keep running the numbers in my head and I can't work out which audience this movie is meant for. I mean, sure, it's a remake of a 1941 animated classic, but it's the kind of movie you only really remember if you or a friend happened to have the VHS of it. It's not based on a classic fairy tale like Cinderella, or even a book so nice they made it twice, like The Jungle Book. And unlike Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, there hasn't been an ongoing brand introducing new audiences to the characters with each generation. Even The Lion King has a spin-off preschool series now. The 1941 animated Disney film is it for Dumbo. That's who Dumbo is and what Dumbo has. And even the grandparent section of the audience isn't going to have a huge nostalgia for that because it came out more than 80 years ago. And that's kind of a good thing because it means that the audience don't go in with wild expectations of lavishly recreated set pieces. This movie is actually really different to the original, but that creative freedom comes at the cost of audience familiarity. Most people will go in knowing the elephant flies, they might know something about a feather, they might have heard Baby Mine, and that's it. So what does Dumbo do to hook in each of those 4 audience groups? Well, for kids, it's got a flying elephant, and that's pretty solid gold. Dumbo is cute. It's cute. The film also adds in 2 child protagonists. You got Millie and Joe, and bit of a tangent here, I'm pretty sure Joe is only in the movie because the studio were worried about alienating young boys. Millie has a character arc and growth and a relationship with Dumbo, and Joe is just kind of there in most scenes. You could take him out of the movie and it would actually streamline the plot a lot more because Millie, as an only child who can't relate with her distant father, is a lot closer to Dumbo's narrative. For your no-kid audience, the appeal isn't actually in the characters or the storyline, it's in the director. Tim Burton is one of the few directors that a casual film-going audience will recognise, but Dumbo is a lot more Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children than Beetlejuice. Casting is normally the other area that your no-kid audience get reeled in on, whether it's big stars or people they recognise from Game of Thrones. And while the cast for Dumbo is fine, you know, everyone likes Danny DeVito and Michael Keaton and kind of Colin Farrell, but they're not big-name draws. It's not Emma Watson or Cate Blanchett or Will Smith. Eva Green's in it, which means that all bisexuals are required by law to see the movie, but other than that, the cast are not a draw. Given the choice between Captain Marvel and Dumbo, most millennials and people without kids are going to go for Captain Marvel. But joke's on them because Disney got their money anyway. When you get to parents and grandparents, you've got kind of the same problem as you had with your no kids. People don't really have a huge association with Dumbo. And you might get some Tim Burton fans, but most of your audience are going to be seeing this film because they know that Disney will be safe, family-friendly entertainment. So when it comes down to it, Dumbo is a $170 million film that is trading off its director's name, a couple of kid protagonists, some cast you might want to see, and the Disney name. And Disney is pretty much the only studio that can do this. No one says, oh, let's go see a Warner Brothers film, or hey, I really liked Shrek as a kid, let's go see The Boss Baby, because that's also a DreamWorks film. So I guess the answer to the question, who is Dumbo for, is it doesn't really matter, because it's a Disney film. And everyone who sees it, whether or not it's their first consideration, will at some point make the decision to see it, partially because it's a Disney film. And Disney, you know, they're in a rare breed to be able to do that. The only other studios who really have that power are Pixar and Marvel and maybe Lucasfilm with Star Wars. And oh. Anyway, if you made it this far, congratulations. thanks. This is kind of my first video, so hopefully I'll do more of them. Probably not here because I'm in a hostel right now, and this is not my bookshelf. This is a 50 Shades of Grey book that I turned around so you'd take me seriously. Also, Dumbo 2019 has Alan Arkin say the line, "Let's hope that Dream Daddy has worked out all the kinks." And I don't want people to see this movie and give it money, but I do want you all to know that.